Hey there folks, the #1 Outkast fan from the Infinite Jukebox here with another entry in my Rock Hall Reviews series for 2025. What is the Rock Hall Review series, you may be asking? It's a yearly series that I do on this channel where I talk about one album from each of the current year's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nominees, give it a little review, and then talk about whether I think they deserve to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and if I think they will be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Two questions that much more frequently than you would ever expect or want have very different answers. And today I'm talking about not only my favorite nominee on the nominee list this year, but also just one of my favorite musical acts of all time, Outkast, and their classic 1998 third studio album, Aquemini, which also happens to be my personal favorite among their pretty perfect body of work. Okay, this is a bit of a hot take here, but get this. I think that Outkast are good. Let that sink in. Shockingly to absolutely nobody, as someone who's a dork and also listens to music and talks about it a lot, I think Outkast are among the greats. In fact, to me, they are maybe the greatest. Andre 3000 may be my favorite rapper of all time. You would have to put a gun to my head, though, to get me to give you a solid answer on that. And Big Boi is easily top 30, maybe top 20 for me as well, being a vastly underrated performer. So, yeah, no shit, I like Outkast. Crazy, right? And Aquemini, for me, is my personal favorite album among their discography. While I understand some people like ATLiens a bit more for how much simpler it is in some ways and how much punchier it is on certain tracks, or Stankonia for how much more experimental it is, to me, on Aquemini, this is the record that represents Outkast the best. The perfect amount of chemistry, the perfect amount of experimentation, consistency. To me, this is Andre and Big Boi at their peaks in terms of all of those things, and generally speaking, I can't really convey how much I adore this record, but I'm gonna try anyway, because it's one of my favorite albums of all time. After their somewhat polarizing sophomore studio album, ATLiens, which was kind of polarizing because it was seen as a step away from their more street-level and one-on-one relatable lyrical approach, was released and, kind of started to become a classic, which it deserved to become because it's an amazing album, of course. Outkast followed it up with this record, Aquemini, in '98, and man, from the second this opens up, you can just tell that they were on another level here. The first verses that we get from Andre and Big Boi in that particular order on the album opening full-length track, Return of the G, is just absolutely amazing, because it really does immediately dissect what this record is all about. Them returning to their honest roots while also discussing things from a different perspective. No longer are they the absolute nobodies that they initially were outside of the Southern rap scene when they first released Southern Playalistic Cadillac Music in '94. They were now notable rap stars that had just put the South on the map, basically, and broke up the sort of fight going on between the East Coast and the West Coast. The whole duel between fans of Biggie and the fans of Pac was soon to be over in full, not only because of their deaths, but because of the fact that Outkast and the Southern United States were now key contenders in terms of what could be popular and culturally relevant outside of the South within the larger national rap scene and the international rap scene in North America, for that matter. And this album really does just kick things off immediately by representing them as people who are still honest and genuine and easy to connect with in terms of having regular personability, but still being larger-than-life figures, with Andre 3000 having his signature flamboyance from the second this record started, and Big Boi having a lot of really clever wordplay and some punchy deliveries that I think are honestly vastly underrated. I mean, some of the best verses, not only in their respective careers, but just in the history of rap as a genre, are delivered here on this record. If you want a shorter verse, go for Andre's second verse on Aquemini, in my opinion. If you want some of the more explosive verses, Big Boi's last appearance on the album closer Chonky Fire is absolutely amazing. The absolutely bitter storytelling of The Art of Storytelling Part 1, with Andre's very sad and kind of conclusive wrap-up to an affinity for a woman who dies, it's just a powerful listening experience because it so frequently bounces between some of the most energetic and punchy verses you've heard in your life and some of the most lyrically profound songs that you've ever heard in your life as well. And it results in this record that you would think would be all over the place in the way, but isn't at all, because it really does just feel like two people that you really can admire and appreciate from an artistic standpoint being very human, very vulnerable, yet at the same time extremely confident, and rightfully so. And that also leads into a lot of really amazing hooks and choruses here. I mean, Skew It on the Barbie, which features a great feature from Raekwon of Wu-Tang fame, of course, is absolutely amazing and has a damn catchy hook. I really love a lot of the more kind of rock-oriented and semi-psychedelic kind of moments, for example. Again, Chunky Fire being maybe my favorite example of that on this record, that really lean into that sonic experimentation. The chorus of Aquemini, the title track, again, has always kind of stuck in my head for one reason or another, and I really love the vocal effects on Andre's voice in the Art of Storytelling Part 2, a track that I think is honestly horribly underrated and one of my favorites from Outkast in general, definitely one of my favorites from this record, and no discussion of Aquemini could ever happen without going and talking about the absolute classic that is Rosa Parks. Moving aside any of the controversy that came with the law stuff relating to Rosa Parks that happened with that song and all the court junk, it's a perfect song. One of Big Boy's best verses, one of Andre's best verses, one of the most interesting beats that they've ever rapped over, especially with that like harmonica solo that feels so out of place yet perfect at the same time. The extremely memorable chorus that's at one way kind of easy to appreciate just on a level of like catchiness, but in another way really easy to also appreciate from a feat of production, with a lot of it feeling this really anthemic kind of sound despite it just being literally two dudes. It manages to be so incredibly fascinating, this record, at times. The way it's produced and the way that it's performed, it really does feel like the most intense performance that you've ever heard in your entire life, but it's really just a few people working some absolute studio magic, as well as having a couple of great features. I mentioned Raekwon before, but also, perhaps most notably, on the track Synthesizer, George Clinton, Parliament Funkadelic bandleader, P-Funk legend, etc., you know who he is, I'm sure, is there, and delivers some amazing work as well, leading to tracks like Slump and West Savannah, which I think are terribly underrated and rank among some of the best work that Outkast ever put out, even though I could say that about really almost any track on this record, if I'm being completely honest. I even kind of like Mamacita, don't get me wrong. I do think that's probably the weakest verse that Andre delivers on this record, but I don't think the chorus is nearly as bad as people say it is. It's not that repetitive or grating. It's just fine, and everyone else's verse on that record or track I really like, honestly. I mean, for the most part, this is an album that I consider perfect. Don't get me wrong, it has weaker moments, but those weaker moments are still great, and the rest of the album is just absolutely amazing. Some of the best production of all time, some of the best verses ever laid down on wax, two of the best rappers to ever live, working together in pretty much perfect harmony before they kind of began to have different artistic visions, feeling so human, but also so larger than life. It just feels like a perfect album to me. It's my favorite Outkast album, lyrically, sonically, everythingly. It's just one of my favorite albums of all time. If you told me to make a top 50 albums, I'm sure that I would probably put it on there. It's a record I adore, have nothing short of an absolute undying affinity for. I just have a lot of passion for this particular album. Look, honestly, I could really spend all day talking about this record, which I can't really because I try to keep these videos within an under 20-minute runtime for the Rock Hall Reviews series, at the very least. But, you know, this is an album that really defined an era in my eyes. I mean, sure, I totally understand someone who prefers AT Aliens, prefers Stankonia, prefers Speaker Box and The Love Below, or one or the other. I even understand someone who prefers Southern Playlist to Cadillac Music, despite that being the most meat and potatoes record that Outkast ever put out, because all of those other records are near perfect as well. They're all brilliant. Again, Idlewild not being included in this conversation, we don't talk about that. Perfect discography. I would not be mad at anyone for saying a different record is their favorite Outkast album, but for me, personally, this one just hits me hard. It hits me at times in an emotional way on tracks like The Arts of Storytelling Part 1 and 2 that I don't think a lot of other records really managed to do. It hits me energetically speaking on tracks like Skew It on the Barbie and even Synthesizer and even, again, kind of Mamacita, which I don't think is a bad song at all, in a way that no other albums really can. It's just an album that gets me hyped, it moves me, it touches me in my heart, it's so good. It's so good. It's perfect. If you haven't listened to it, why not? What are you doing? Go listen to it, please, for the love of God. Two of the best rappers of all time, making some of the most consistent, cohesive music that not only they ever made, but that any rappers ever made. One of the greatest albums ever made. And I really do think that this is rightfully considered by some to be their magnum opus. But again, really any album could. But overall, no matter what Outkast album you prefer, your favorite, which ones you like, which ones you maybe dislike, I think that one thing is very agreeable no matter what your taste in Outkast or Southern rap in general is. Outkast broke down absolute barriers for Southern rappers. I mean, really, it took over the East Coast-West Coast battle and added a new region of the United States for, relevance and cultural impact in the United States that stretched beyond its initial Southern heritage and roots. And really, I think that's maybe the most intensely interesting thing about this record. It's not only two guys who were really just confessing a lot of honest truths about their lives while at the same time creating one of the most sonically fascinating and passionate albums of the decade, but at the same time, it's also a record that has something to say. I mean, just like Andre 3000 himself said just a couple years prior to this record, the South had something to say. This is an album made by people who knew that they were representing where they came from for the largest audience that particular geographic area of rappers had ever seen before. And in that sense, it really does feel, especially on tracks like Rosa Parks, that they were just doing their best to represent their particular region at the best of its abilities, and I think they did a damn perfect job at doing exactly that. The South did have something to say, and I personally think that Outkast said it better than anybody else. I'm going to give this record 5 stars out of 5. If you couldn't guess already by the amount of times I said that this is one of the best albums ever made by this point in the review. I love this one. Masterpiece stuff for me. I adore it. What can I say? Now, do I think that Outkast deserve to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Now, I could just do my sarcastic stare at the camera until I say yes and then, just talk about the next topic, because that's what I'm almost tempted to do. Obviously, Outkast are not only one of the most influential duos in music history, but easily top 10, maybe even top 5 most influential rappers of all time, if you're including them as a single unit. I mean, really, it doesn't get much more impactful than this. The South exists in mainstream pop culture for interested people in rap because of them. Not to say that there aren't any other Southern rappers that, nearly reach their level of cultural relevance, but at the same time, they kind of did start it all on a mainstream level. Sure, Southern rap existed before them, but it was never the same after them either. And that doesn't even begin to talk about the fact that they, as mainstream artists, especially with Stankonia, broke down walls in what could be popular within mainstream rap as far as creativity goes. I mean, in an era that was transitioning more and more into what people consider the bling era of artists like 50 Cent and The Game, for example, Outkast were doing stuff that was outright abstract at points. The flamboyancy of Andre 3000 and the increasing heaviness and sort of confidence that you got from Big Boy was just something so unique, so unlike anything else that was being released throughout the 90s into the early 2000s, and it resulted in some of the biggest hits and some of the most classic records that the genre ever delivered, and I don't see how anyone could deny that impact. Sure, there's that conversation people have every year when those 1 or 2 rap artists are nominated, where the rap doesn't belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I don't give a fuck. I don't care. It does. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. If you want to consider everything that's considered rock and roll just as pure attitude, I don't think you can do that much more than Outkast, a band that broke down barriers sonically, aesthetically, culturally, completely changed the game, reinvented how people viewed the southern United States as far as its relevance to rap and the music industry in general. And as a whole, that's fucking rock and roll to me. I don't know what to say. I think that Outkast are more rock and roll in terms of pure spirit and energy than, like, 90% of the artists on the list this year, most of whom are actually traditionally rock artists in terms of genre. So, yeah, absolutely Outkast deserve it. Now, will Outkast get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? I'm like 95% certain that they will, mainly because they are the only rap act on the ballot this year. For many years, a few years at least, the constant renomination of A Tribe Called Quest was definitely the thing that was kind of holding them back, as well as any other future nominated rap acts back from being nominated, because similar to how I think the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is trying to get a band like Oasis inducted before they go to a band like Coldplay, I don't think they were comfortable with inducting a group like Outkast or Wu-Tang Clan before they inducted a group like A Tribe Called Quest. And while that is kind of weird because they're still missing a lot of genre pioneers, I still do think that Outkast are kind of next in line for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And being the only rap act on the ballot this year, seeing as how they've pretty much tried to get a rap artist or group inducted every year for a number of years at this point, I think they're next in line, and they have no competition. I don't really see why they wouldn't, considering the commercial success of their entire history, the main thing that the Hall honestly cares about. And yeah, I see nothing standing in their way overall, and after they get inducted, I could see the same thing happening to, like, Wu-Tang Clan, maybe? I'm not really sure what comes next after Outkast, but I do know that they have a nearly 100% shot of getting in this year. And if they don't get in this year, not only will it be shocking, but it will absolutely happen the following year. But again, they are one of the closest things to a lock on this ballot alongside Cyndi Lauper, just because of the fact that I really do feel like there's no way that you couldn't induct them at this point. I mean, the years spent nominating mainly Tribe, but also a couple other rap artists, were spent kind of holding off on Outkast despite them being more commercially successful, not necessarily saying they're more or less influential than Tribe or any other artist nominated in that time period. But that time was spent holding off on Outkast, and now that they're here and nominated, I can't imagine that they wouldn't want to induct them pretty much immediately. And with that being said, that is the end of this entry in the Rock Hall Reviews series for 2025. Thank you for watching the Infinite Jukebox, and I'll see you in the next one.